As humanity perfected its military dominance over land and sea, it wasn't long before great minds turned their attention upward. What about the sky? If someone could rain hell on their enemy from above, who could possibly challenge them? Long before powered flight, this idea was taken seriously. In 1784, just after the first hot air balloon flight, Benjamin Franklin himself mused over the strategic possibilities, predicting that an airborne force of 10,000 men could do an infinite deal of mischief before anyone could stop them. He essentially predicted paratroopers centuries before they existed. But back in the 16th and 17th centuries, for people torn between new science and devout faith, the sky was a place of mystery, of angels and gods, where no mortal was meant to tread. So, you can imagine the shock in 1566 when the citizens of Basel, Switzerland, witnessed something beyond all explanation against a peaceful morning backdrop. They saw what could only be described as a great battle in the sky between hundreds of dark, sphere-shaped objects. This is the story of the unexplained battle over Basel. In the early 16th century, Europe was in the middle of a massive societal evolution. The Renaissance had people re-examining everything they thought they knew about art, human nature, religion, and science, with this new emphasis on individual thought. It wasn't long before people started challenging the established powers, especially the Catholic Church. In 1517, a monk named Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses, a scathing critique of church corruption, to a church door in Germany. This act sent shockwaves across Europe and is credited with starting the Protestant Reformation. New religious groups began to break away from the church's authority, leading to violent clashes all over the continent. Protestant, Lutheran, and Calvinist supporters came to blows with Catholic authorities. As the religious landscape fractured, war became inevitable. In the German states, peasant revolts were brutally crushed, claiming over 100,000 lives. In France, a civil war between Catholics and Protestants, known as Huguenots, raged for over 30 years, leaving millions dead. Switzerland, situated at the crossroads of France, Italy, and the German states, was caught in the middle of this strife. The effects of religious wars were still deeply felt in Swiss society. For the citizens of Basel, a city on the Rhine River bordering France and the German states, the latter half of the 16th century was filled with fear. With war and plague spreading, people felt spiritually torn. Protestant and Catholic factions exploited these fears to win public support. Despite the turmoil, July 27, 1566, started like any other day in the bustling economic hub of Basel. The city docks echoed with the calls of merchants, and the river was filled with boats. But as the sun began to set, this ordinary day would become anything but. How about it? Any bites? Not in the slightest. Been hours. I think it's time we found a new spot. It's all these damn boats, I tell you, up and down the river, scaring away all the fish. You think this is the Lord's way of getting us to crawl back to the Catholics? If only the man himself were here. He helped Peter fill 2 boats. I'd do anything for just one bite. Is it just my eyes? Or is the sky suddenly getting darker? What? In God's name? It's going red. According to witnesses, the day had been normal. But around 9 p.m., the sun suddenly seemed to go dark, bathing the city in an ominous red light. A writer named Samuel Cosius described the scene in a pamphlet published shortly after. He wrote that the sun lost its radiance, became no bigger than the full moon, and sameth to weep tears of blood. The air behind it turned dark. The moon, which was nearly full, also took on a blood-red color. The next day, the sun rose with the same terrifying appearance, making everything, houses, streets, and the countryside, look as if it were blood-red and fiery. For a full 24 hours, the people of Basel stared at the red sky, filled with fear and confusion. Was it some strange atmospheric phenomena, or, as many feared, a prophetic warning from God? Just as panic was about to take hold, the city breathed a collective sigh of relief. On the morning of July 29th, the vibrant sun and blue skies returned as if nothing had happened. But this return to normal left the people of Basel with far more questions than answers. And as they would soon discover, the heavenly drama was far from over. On August 7th, just over a week later, the strangeness returned. But this time it was different. At sunrise, numerous large, black spheres appeared in the sky. As Cochius documented, they flew before the sun with great speed and stormed against each other, as if they were fighting a battle. Many turned red and fiery, then faded and went out. This event, witnessed by countless people in Bosel, became known as the 1566 celestial phenomenon. For centuries, it has been a source of fascination and debate. Religious leaders of the time immediately interpreted it as a divine sign, a warning of the coming apocalypse. Given the ongoing religious wars and social unrest, it's easy to see why they'd believe the end was not. The battle in the sky seemed to mirror the very real conflicts happening on the ground. But what about a scientific explanation? Modern meteorologists suggest the phenomena could have been a complex series of atmospheric events. The red sun and moon might have been caused by smoke or dust in the upper atmosphere, perhaps from a distant volcanic eruption. The black spheres could have been a particularly dense flock of birds, a swarm of insects, or even atmospheric mirages, known as sundogs, which can create illusions of multiple suns. However, none of these theories perfectly account for the descriptions of a high battle where objects consumed one another and faded away. The detail and consistency of the witness accounts, especially as recorded by a well-regarded scholar like Cochius, make it difficult to dismiss entirely as a simple misinterpretation. And that, of course, brings us to the more speculative theories. Could the people of Basel have witnessed something not of this world? Ancient astronaut theorists point to this event, and a similar one in Nuremberg, 5 years earlier, as possible evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. They argue that the spheres were alien craft engaged in some kind of conflict, far beyond the comprehension of 16th century observers. The Basel pamphlet is one of the earliest documented accounts of what we might today call a UFO sighting. While we can analyze the historical context and propose scientific explanations, we can't definitively know what those people saw. Was it a miracle, a natural phenomenon, or something else entirely? The story serves as a powerful reminder that there are moments in history that defy easy explanation, leaving us to wonder about the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. What do you think happened over Basel in 1566? Did you know that hundreds of years before the first airplane, people were witnessing epic battles in the sky? Let's travel back to August 7th, 1566. Over the city of Basel, Switzerland, the rising sun revealed a truly bizarre sight. A writer named Samuel Cochius described it like this. Large black spheres came and went with great speed, chattering as if they were in a fight. He said many were fiery red, and then they just crumbled and extinguished. Imagine being there. Hundreds of sphere-like objects, like cannonballs, zipping across the sky in dizzying patterns. Eyewitnesses said they moved with intelligence and purpose. Against the sun, they looked black, but some would turn fiery red before plummeting towards the ground, dissolving into smoke and ash before they could even hit the earth. And the sound. A distinct chattering noise echoing across the city as these things seemed to knock each other out of the air. For hours, the people of Basel were just glued to this spectacle until every last object faded away. In the eerie silence that followed, a frightened and confused city was left desperate for an explanation. This happened at a time when science was just taking its first baby steps. We were only beginning to understand the natural world, and ideas like aircraft or alien life were centuries away. So, naturally, people interpreted this event through a religious lens. The story was captured in what's known as the Basel pamphlet, which spread like wildfire across Europe. Thinkers who trusted science struggled to explain it, while religious believers proclaimed it was a sign from God. But even they couldn't agree. Was it a warning of Judgment Day, or God showing his displeasure with humanity? For people living through war and plague, torn between faith and new ideas, it was a lot to take in. But as the world debated, the people of Nuremberg, Germany, felt a chilling sense of déjà vu. They had seen something eerily similar just 5 years earlier. On April 14, 1561, the sky over Nuremberg went dark. The sun turned a dull red, and thousands of people saw strange shapes appearing against the horizon. A local artist, Hans Glaser, witnessed it all and documented the aerial battle in a news broadsheet. He described 2 blood-red arcs in the middle of the sun, and all around it, balls of black and red. There were also crosses and strange strips, like reeds, all mixed together. He wrote that these objects all started to fight among themselves, flying back and forth for over an hour. When the conflict was at its most intense, they became fatigued, fell from the sun, and wasted away on the earth with immense smoke. Afterwards, a huge, black, spear-like object appeared in the sky. Glazer ended his report by saying, "Whatever such signs mean, God alone knows." He saw it as a call for repentance, a warning from a merciful Father in heaven. Glazer's account from Nuremberg is strikingly similar to the one from Basel, but with a few extra details. He didn't just see spheres. He described crosses, crescents, and even cylinders or rods. He noted that some of these cylinders seemed to launch squadrons of spheres, kind of like a modern aircraft carrier. And his observation that the objects fell as if exhausted is fascinating. Was he suggesting they were living beings, like angels and demons fighting a celestial war? And what about that giant spear that hung over the city for hours? Whether it was a battle between heaven and hell or some bizarre natural event, one thing was clear. Something strange was happening in the skies over Europe, and the fight wasn't over yet. Fast forward nearly a century to 1665. Europe had been torn apart by the 30 Years' War, a brutal conflict rooted in religious division. By the 1660s, the Swedish Empire was at the peak of its power, controlling parts of northern Germany. On April 8th, in the German city of Stralsund, then under Swedish rule, 6 fishermen set out for their daily catch in the Baltic Sea. But their attention was quickly drawn from the water to the sky above. They saw a massive flock of birds, flying in a strange formation unlike anything they'd ever witnessed. Then, the real show began. As the fishermen watched, the flock of birds transformed into what looked like warships, locked in a fierce battle. Masts, sails, and cannons became visible as the phantom fleets maneuvered and fired upon each other in the sky. Smoke billowed from the cannons, and the sounds of battle echoed across the water. The fight raged for hours, a terrifying and awe-inspiring spectacle. After the battle, a single, dark shape remained hovering in the sky. It was a man, cloaked in a gray robe, sitting on a chair. This mysterious figure just sat there, observing the world below. The next day, the fishermen, still shaken, noticed something else. Their hands and faces were trembling, and they were in constant pain. This shaking sickness spread to others in the city who had also witnessed the event. The phenomenon became known as the Stralsund Sky Battle for the people on the ground. The physical effects were as real and terrifying as the vision itself. Was it mass hysteria, a strange, atmospheric phenomena, or something more? We can speculate about mirages or meteorological events, but the detailed, consistent testimonies from different times and places make these stories hard to dismiss entirely. What do you think was happening in the skies over 16th and 17th century Europe? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And have you ever heard whispers of battles in the sky, long before we ever invented airplanes? Stories that sound like science fiction, but are etched into historical records. Let's travel back to 1662, off the coast of Germany. A small fishing vessel drops anchor, its crew baffled. A massive flock of starlings suddenly takes flight, but this is no ordinary migration. The crew watches, stunned, as this black mass of birds morphs into floating wooden warships. Yes, you heard that right. An entire fleet, right there in the sky. These phantom ships circled and unleashed broadsides, the boom of their cannons echoing like distant thunder. Gunpowder smoke created an eerie haze as more ships floated in from the east and west, joining the fierce aerial battle. After what felt like an eternity, the sky fell silent. The haze cleared to reveal the broken, floating wrecks of the ships. Among the torn sails and collapsed masts, the fishermen could make out the shapes of men, scrambling on the decks as if trying to make repairs. One figure, an officer in a brown coat, stood watching his crew. As if that wasn't strange enough, the phantom fleet eventually drifted north and vanished. Then, something else descended from the clouds, a large, dark gray, disc-shaped object. It hovered silently over the spire of St. Nicholas Church. One writer from the era described it as a flat, round form like a plate, looking like the big hat of a man. The fishermen, terrified beyond belief, couldn't bear to look anymore. In the days that followed, they all fell sick with trembling, fevers, and intense pain. This incident in Stralsund wasn't a one-off, just a century earlier. Similar, equally bizarre events were recorded over Nuremberg, Germany in 1561, and Basel, Switzerland in 1566. In both cities, hundreds of people witnessed the sky fill with spheres, crosses, and tubes of various colors. These objects appeared to dart about, engaging in what witnesses described as a terrifying battle. The event over Nuremberg lasted for about an hour, with some objects reportedly crashing to the earth and disappearing in a thick cloud of smoke. So what on earth, or perhaps asterisk, Earth was going on? For centuries, these events were largely forgotten. But in the mid-20th century, with the rise of the modern UFO craze, they were re-examined. Famed psychologist Carl Jung himself studied these cases. He suggested they might not be physical objects, but rather psychic projections of the human mind expressing itself in the sky. Or, perhaps, they were misidentifications of natural phenomena. Think about it. Strange atmospheric conditions, like a fata morgana, can create complex making objects over the horizon appear to float in the air. Some theorized the Stralsund fishermen saw a real naval battle happening far out at sea, its image refracted and projected into the sky above them. What about the darkened suns and red skies reported in Nuremberg and Bad? Maybe they were caused by solar eclipses, or even clouds of dust blown all the way from the Sahara Desert. But these explanations don't quite fit all the details, do they? They don't account for hundreds of people seeing objects locked in vicious aerial combat, or the sounds of cannon fire, or things falling from the sky in smoking ruins. Could it have been swarms of insects, or vast flocks of birds? Maybe. But would people really describe them as bursting into flames? It's possible the accounts were simply exaggerated over time, embellished for a good story. Of course, there's the other theory, the one that gives you chills. For many, the people of Basel, Nuremberg, and Stralsund caught a glimpse of something truly extraordinary. A war between rival extraterrestrial forces, playing out in our skies. It sounds outlandish, but it raises some hair-raising questions. If they were aliens, wo were they? Why were they fighting here, above our planet? And if they were to return today, with all our advanced technology, could we even begin to understand, let alone defend ourselves against something so beyond our comprehension? These events from centuries ago remain some of history's most compelling unsolved mysteries. They force us to look up at the sky and wonder what secrets it still holds. What do you think they saw? Was it a mirage, mass hysteria, or a genuine glimpse into a conflict from another world? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.